So the next question is actually related on that. So could you share any interesting stories or experiences from working with Grammy or Billboard artists that you mentioned before?
I'll share a couple things. I found that anybody who has made it in the business, they are the hardest working people that I have ever worked with. So if somebody comes to me before they have made it in the business and they want to study with me, and then ultimately they make it in the business, they become famous, as I go back and look at their process that they have gone through to become famous, those have always been the hardest working students that I have ever had. They are the most diligent, they're the most prepared, they work the hardest, they train the hardest, they take care of their voices the best. They're so dedicated and driven, and it is the most important to them. They are genuinely 100% of their energy is focused on becoming a superstar. That's where their focus is. The others who are talented that don't make it is because they're somewhat lazy. They are entitled. They feel like they deserve to be famous, but they don't know how to work at it. And the ones who make it, I've always, from when I first started working with very famous singers, I found that all of them have this ability to completely dedicate themselves to their craft, to their profession. They're just focused and dedicated to it in a way that my other clients have not figured out. They've not learned how to be dedicated. That's the key. That's the key.
So actually, your answer can be a good advice for some singers that they want to be famous later.
If somebody comes to me and asks me, what do I have to do to make it in the business? I already know they're not going to make it in the business. Because they're asking me what they have to do. That means they have not done their own homework and they have not figured it out. It is not, what I always say, it is not oxygen for them. They are not hungry. It's the ones who come to me already with a plan and a vision. They know what they want already. Those are the ones who make it. But the ones who come and say, how many hours a week should I practice? How many times a day should I vocalize? How many times a week should I work on my voice? Or how many times a week should I work on writing songs? Those guys never make it. It's the ones who come to me and say, I'm vocalizing 4 hours a day. Is that enough? I'm spending 20 hours a week working on writing my music. Is that enough? Those are the ones who make it. Not the ones who say, how many minutes a day should I spend on vocalizing? Those guys never make it. They never make it. It's not important to them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so that can be also a talent, like.
That is a gift. Because their gift is focus and dedication. I can't teach somebody that. They come to me with that. When Benson Boone first came here, my studio, when he first came in, he was on fire. He was just a little kid. He's like a 19-year-old boy. And there was this energy about him that was just so palpable. It was so incredible. He was just so excited and so full of energy. I knew he was going to be famous. You could just tell. It's just, you can just sense it. And they're all like that. All of my famous ones have all had that same energy about them. And the ones who are talented, I've had many, many, many students who are more talented than Benson Boone, who will never be famous. Many students are more talented than Dan Reynolds, or many students who are more talented than Brandon Flowers from The Killers. Many students who will never be famous because they don't have the other things. They're missing the other pieces, the other elements. They don't know how to work. They're not smart. They don't know how to write. They don't know how to work hard. They don't know how to present themselves well. They don't know how to interact with an audience. They don't know how to entertain. They don't know how to communicate. They don't know how to interview. They don't know how to be on television. All those things are important. They just have a pretty voice and they think that's enough. That is not enough in this business. That's one small piece of a very, very large pie, very large puzzle. And they think, well, I have a pretty voice. I should become famous. Nope. That's not how it works. That only works in opera. That only works in classical musical theater. It does not work in any other form of singing. Certainly not in pop or rock. You have to be an entertainer. You have to have the right look. You have to have the right body. You have to have the right personality. You have to dress right. You have to be right in front of a camera. You have to be. You have to have an ability to communicate on stage. All of that stuff is just as important as the ability to sing. Maybe in some cases more important.
Yes.
I'll tell you something. Look at Britney Spears and look at Christina Aguilera. You know those singers?
Yes.
Of course.
Okay. Britney Spears is not a great singer. If you look at her on a scale of 1 to 10, she's a 4. And Christina Aguilera on a 1 to 10 was a 9. And yet they both were very famous in the 90s. They both had matching careers. They both were making millions of dollars. Who had a better career? They had the same career. They were making the same amount of money. They were selling out the same arenas. They were both incredibly successful. How come they were both so successful? Because Britney was so smart that she could market herself in spite of the fact that she was not a great singer. She could market herself in all of the other elements that she was not weak in spite of the fact that she was not a fantastic singer. She was an adequate singer, but she could market herself, she could dance, she looked good, she had good hair, she had a good body, she was great on stage, in spite of the fact that she was not a great singer. Who are you more impressed with? I'm more impressed with Britney Spears than I am with Christina Aguilera. Christina Aguilera obviously should have had a singing career. Britney Spears was not obvious as a singer, and yet they had matching careers, same time. That's impressive to me. That's impressive. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
I feel like I already read a self-development book.
It's not just about singing. It is in musical theater and classical singing and opera. You have to have a great voice, but that is not the case in other worlds, in other parts of singing. It's not the case. Other things matter more. We look at my student. Look at Dan Reynolds. He's not a great singer. He's a good singer, but he's a great entertainer. He's a fantastic entertainer. Look at Brandon Flowers. He's a great singer, but he's also a great entertainer. Right? Look at Brendan Urie from Panic at the Disco. He's a good singer. He's a great singer. He's also a great entertainer. But how can you have Dan Reynolds, who's a fine singer, and Brandon Flowers at the same time having matching careers, when Brandon Flowers is a better singer than Dan Reynolds? Because Dan Reynolds has figured out how to market himself in other areas, in spite of the fact that he's not as good of a singer. He's my student, and I can say that, because he's figured out what he does well, and that is he writes great music, and he's a great entertainer. He's a showman. He's very, very good at it. That's really, really important. If you can get your students to figure that out, they figured out something really, really valuable. It's not just about singing, my friends. It's so much more than that. Unless they're what I call a park and bark singer, where they stand at the front of the stage and they do nothing but sing, like Josh Groban. Josh Groban cannot entertain. He doesn't need to do anything but stand at the stage and sing, because his voice is a 10. That's all he needs to do. He does not entertain. He sings, right? That's different. He's not an entertainer. He's a singer.
I really like this one because there's singer just born is that everyone just say that, but the truth is not like this,
So there's so much more to it.
Yeah.
So much more to it. I learned that very, very early on when I was sending a very, very, very talented country singer to Los Angeles to work with a producer. And I was so excited to send him down there. And I called the producer the next day and I said, how did it go? And he goes, it was okay. And I thought, what do you mean, okay? Did you hear him sing? And he goes, yeah, he was okay. And I could not figure out what the problem was. And he said, Jeffrey, you're under the impression that we care what he sounds like. We don't care what he sounds like. We care about his personality. And I was just so disappointed in that. And that's when it clicked in my brain. I realized they don't care what he sounds like. They care who he is, what his message is, what his personality is, what he looks like, how he dresses, how he communicates in front of an audience. What does he do on camera? All of that stuff is just as important as his singing. And all I thought about was fixing his voice, fix his voice, fix his voice, fix his voice. Because that's all I knew at the time. I learned an important lesson.